Hello, everyone. Thought I'd start with that amusing video. I just found it on YouTube this morning, so I thought I would borrow it for the occasion. My name is Nicholas G. So hello, welcome, Bula. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And thank you for joining us on this webinar that is focused particularly on Arcserve solutions for Amazon Web Services. Like I say, my name is Nicholas G. I'm the technical director of Cloud Ready Solutions, and supposed to be joining me is Arman Jihanian from Arcserve, who unfortunately can't be with us today. So I am going to carry the load and work my way through some of the Arcserve slide deck before moving on to some of the solution-based content that I have prepared. A recorded version of this webinar will be available once the webinar is over, and we will forward that out to everybody. So just quickly, before we begin, can I just maybe get a show of hands in the chat window? Can everybody hear me okay? Maybe just one or two people just confirming you can hear me okay. Looks okay as far as I can tell. Everyone can hear me. Excellent. In that case, well, let's start with a quick poll, just to check, see who is awake. Let me launch this poll. Now, if you can, just choose one of the answers. Who is currently using or selling cloud for DR? Because we do have a lot of our resellers on board today, and they have invited a lot of their clients. So are you currently selling or using cloud for DR, or do you intend on doing so in the future? Okay, we'll just give it a few more seconds. If you haven't voted yet, get your vote in now. I'm going to close in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, gone. Closing the poll now. And I will just share the results for you. There you go. Okay, thank you for that. So, who are cloud ready? I hear this a lot because we're a very small company, but we make a lot of noise, especially in the disaster recovery, backup, and server migration space. We are the Arcserve value-added distributor for Arcserve in Pacific Islands, in Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands. Also, we distribute a product called Replication in Australia and New Zealand. Cloud Data Safe, something I might touch on later, but it is something that we offer as well. And Cloud Ready Services, we have a services arm which helps our partners to deploy the professional services. That's who we are, and we do obviously have local engineers and local support for the solutions that we deploy, and we are experienced cloud experts. So I'll just go into some of the content provided by Arcserve, just a quick overview. So like I say, usually I would get someone from Arcserve to present this content, but I will stumble through it. So Arcserve UDP, it's been around for 2 or 3 years now. It was formerly called a product called D2D, Arcserve D2D. And a few years ago, Arcserve decided to bundle or join together 3 of their products, being D2D, Arcserve RHA, and Arcserve Backup. They also vastly improved the D2D engine to create UDP. UDP being a point-in-time image-based backup solution. Arcserve Backup being a traditional backup solution for tapes, etc., long-term archival, etc., and Arcserve RHA being real-time high availability using a byte-level replication engine. Those three former technologies were merged under this unified architecture to offer physical virtual protection using a unified management console. UDP introduced the concept of a recovery point server, which enables global source-side deduplication of your backup data, which saves not only on data storage by an incredible amount, but also on the amount of data transferred over the network in a DR scenario. And there's obviously several key features that we'll be touching on in the rest of the webinar. Arcserve have this concept of an SLA dial. So you can use Arcserve UDP all the way from single computer requirement. You want to back up some files that are on your desktop or laptop, all the way up to enterprise grade solutions deployments that require much more detailed requirements. So on the SLA dial, we have what we call a good level of protection, and this could consist of daily backups to tape with a tape copy stored off-site, maybe virtual standby for key systems. We'll touch on virtual standby, and maybe quarterly DR testing. A better level of protection that can be used using the same product, just deploying it in a different way, could be full backup with multiple daily increments. Replication of those backups to the DR site with remote virtual standbys for those key systems. So you can bring up the systems remotely on a separate network in a very short amount of time. And then, of course, we've got the best level of protection that you add on to that with multi-site replication of your data, with global deduplication, a long-term archival to tape, full system high availability for those mission critical systems, or application level high availability. And of course, you can add on something we call automated assured recovery testing. So you can do automated DR testing on a regular basis, even on a daily basis if required. And that is the whole concept of Arcserve UDP. It's the one solution from a small business to a global enterprise. I'll very quickly fly through some of the new features of version 6.5, because really version 6.5 to me is a cloud release. Obviously, cloud-ready solutions worked in the cloud for a long time, and Arcserve UDP version 6.5 really addressed some of the shortcomings that backup solutions have when it comes to cloud. So just quickly touching on these briefly, there is a separate webinar on the new features of UDP 6.5, so I won't go too much detail. Obviously, Office 365 backup is a new feature. Further cloud integration, we've got a feature called Copy Recovery Point to Amazon S3. So you can do your backups on site and then just copy those backups automatically to S3. We have a facility to protect EC2 instances. And more than that, we can do something called an instant VM recovery for Linux servers inside of Amazon, which is a feature I'll be looking at later on. I've got a short demo of that. We've brought the virtual standby for Windows to Amazon EC2, so that was one of the main ways we would recover servers in a say a VMware or Hyper-V environment using virtual standby. We've got that same capability for Amazon EC2 now, and I have a demo of that as well to come up. You can now, obviously, with all these features, you can use the AWS cloud as a remote DR site, as if you had deployed a data center of your own choice of hypervisor. So just a few more features there. Automated testing of your backups for Windows and Linux. Detailed SLA reporting, so you're able to obviously report on the success and the duration of your recoveries, of your automated recoveries, and a whole lot of additional reporting. So that was the quick overview of Arcserve UDP, and if you want to delve into that in more detail, there will be an upcoming webinar hosted by Arcserve themselves going into each of those points. I specifically want to talk about solutions. solutions around AWS. So I have this slide that I love. I can talk about this for hours, but I'll try and get through it fairly quickly. I mentioned before, Arcserve UDP can be used by small businesses. In fact, here's an example. We've got a desktop and a laptop, and you can deploy an account in Amazon, and you can have a simple backup of your desktop, your laptops, with a file copy of your critical data to store and version in Amazon S3. The cheapest possible solution for leveraging the cloud for DR. Just copy your data to store it in S3. Typically, though, most businesses have more than just a desktop or a laptop. They have a few servers, maybe some virtual servers, maybe physical server. And then what a lot of companies do is back up to a USB disk, and then they rely on that USB disk being taken home or something. Still got that capability to use Arcserve UDP in its most basic form to perform full system backups of your servers to a storage device. But we now have this ability to copy those recovery points and store them in Amazon S3. So you could be doing backups on a daily basis and choose to copy them once a week to S3. But really, the smarts and the power of Arcserve UDP comes into play when you introduce the recovery point server into the mix. Now, a recovery point server is really, it's a Windows server with storage, obviously compute and RAM, and you can spec the requirements according for the site. So in this small branch, we've deployed an RPS server, and we're now going to perform our incremental backups to the RPS server. These are incremental forever, so there's only ever a full backup completed once, and after that, your backup windows are incredibly short. We use a source-side deduplication engine, so we don't need to send the data twice across any of the servers. That works for physical and virtual servers, like I mentioned. A larger company would probably have another site, we'll call it a primary site, and they may have more infrastructure, more virtual machines, more physical machines. And we would introduce an RPS server at that site also. Obviously, we're going to back up our on-prem servers at the primary site to that local RPS server, but then we can do something we call replication or synchronization between the RPS servers. That means any server backed up in our branch office is automatically synced to our RPS in our primary site, and obviously can be recovered in that primary site, either using virtual standby, instant VM, or any of the other recovery methods that we've got. The global deduplication I mentioned earlier is very clever, because instead of sending the backup data from the branch office to the primary site, we send a copy of the hash table and a question that basically says, which entries in the hash table do you not have in your data store? And then we can send just the data we need over the network, which drastically reduces the amount of data sent across the network for remote DR. From the primary RPS, we could obviously archive to tape if we wish to, or what people are doing nowadays are deploying a cloud. We can then deploy our Amazon account, our Amazon self-managed cloud, and deploy an RPS server, and we can synchronize all those backups from the primary site directly to the Amazon RPS. From the Amazon RPS, obviously we can perform restores, and now we have various restore methods, including virtual standby and instant VM inside of the Amazon cloud. If you need to, you can recover from the Amazon RPS back to on-premise. You can also leverage the Amazon Storage Gateway virtual tape library for long-term archival. And we also have the ability to do the remote copy to S3. So we can copy copy the recovery points on a schedule to S3. The last piece of the pie, of course, is for this primary site. We've got critical servers. We don't want to rely on the last point in time backup. We want to protect the server with real-time byte level replication. We're able to do this directly from our on-premise servers directly to offline EC2 instances that can be recovered with live data in minutes. That was the self-managed cloud. Obviously, a lot of our clients are MSPs in their own right, and maybe they would like to provide a managed cloud for their clients. So again, the same sort of concept, managed cloud and RPS server. The difference between this RPS server and the previous one is that this could be a multi-tenanted. The MSP, the service provider, could share the RPS amongst multiple clients. So they obviously restore, they receive the backup data from their multiple clients, and then they can actually recover into their client's own AWS account. Okay, that's the overview. The diagram, I could spend hours talking about that, like I say, but I won't do for the sake of time. I want to quickly talk about the Arcserve solutions for Amazon Web Services. Now, there is a white paper that details a lot of these. I have added it to the handout section of the webinar. If you want to download that, you can do that. Quickly go through these. Long-term backup retention in S3. It's obviously that's backup and long-term retention is a common use of the cloud for DR. We have the Arcserve UDP tape module for the AWS Storage Gateway Virtual Tape Library. Full system backups full system recovery of backups in Amazon EC2, which I think is a unique feature in the market. Automated assured recovery testing, migrations. Obviously, Cloud Ready do an awful lot of migrations to the cloud. Full system high availability replication to AWS or between AWS regions. We've got data rewind capability, and we've got Oracle SQL Exchange application level protection. So very quickly, file copy to S3. We've talked about that briefly. It's available in the free version of UDP. If you want to protect a desktop, it's an unmanaged desktop, you can download that version and it will give you that capability. Copy recovery point to S3. This, as I mentioned earlier, I won't spend time on it, but you complete a backup using UDP, and on a schedule, you can copy the recovery point that you want. Maybe it's weekly, and store it in S3, and then forget about it, or recover it back down when you need to, if you ever need to. The Arcserve virtual tape library capability. So this really uses the legacy Arcserve backup product that is driven by the UDP console, and the Amazon virtual tape library, or the Amazon Storage Gateway virtual tape library, is deployed and connected just like any other tape library to the RPS, and then you can leverage that as a large tape device, and then obviously archive those tapes to Glacier. Virtual standby into AWS. This is the big one, the big new feature for version 6.5. This is the ability to create an incredibly cost-effective DR solution for customers. Well, I do have a demonstration of this coming up, but essentially what we're doing is completing a on-premise backup to a recovery point server that is on-premise. Now, again, if you have bandwidth, you can go directly to AWS. If you can have an RPS directly in AWS, or you can just use the RPS on-premise and do the virtual standby from that on-premise server if you have sufficient bandwidth. But typically, we'll deploy an RPS on-prem, an RPS in Amazon. We complete our backups locally. They then replicate to the Amazon RPS, and then they will prepare a virtual machine waiting to be turned on. So each time you complete an incremental backup, the incremental backup is replicated, the standby virtual machine is updated. Simple as that. You're ready to recover the server immediately. instant VM into AWS. So this is a slightly different concept. So instant VM and virtual standby are different. Instant VM, really what it means is that we'll create a VM as needed, and we'll boot that VM initially from the backup. And the backup data will, the rest of the backup will be restored in background mode. So we'll boot up the server immediately. It will be available very quickly, not instantly as the name suggested, but it will be available very quickly. And then the rest of the backup set will be recovered in the background mode. So this really is a cost-effective solution. It is only available, unfortunately, in Amazon EC2 for Linux servers. Gives you that really easy migration capability as well. It has the benefit over, say, virtual standby in that you're not consuming any storage. You're not rehydrating, you're not recovering the data in advance. It's just on demand. It does require the installation of a Linux backup server instance in the cloud. As you can see here, we have a Linux backup server, but that is available as an AMI from the Amazon community marketplace. Now, just quickly on this workflow, we essentially what we're doing here is backing up our Linux servers to an RPS server, replicating to the RPS server in Amazon, and then leveraging this backup server to perform the recovery to a brand new VM that's been created and is actually booted from the RPS itself. Like I say, I do have a demo of that very shortly. Now I've got 3 demos, so I won't spend too much time talking about the lab setup. In fact, this lab setup will appear inside the first video as things happen. But basically what I have in this lab, I have a Telstra CSX environment with 2 servers and an RPS. We have an IBM soft layer environment, which features a virtual machine RPS and also a VMware host. And then we have obviously Amazon AWS. And essentially what we're doing in the demo is backing up our servers in Telstra CSX, replicating the backups to software, then replicating to Amazon, and then spitting out or preparing standby virtual machines that we can then power up. Now, I edited this video yesterday, so it's may be a bit fast, but I'll pause it if needed to explain a bit more. First of all, I'll explain before I click play. This is the Arcserve UDP dashboard. You can see here that playing. You can see here that we've backed up a number of servers, 8 servers, and we can see here we've got 7.6 terabytes of restorable data contained in 178 gigs on disk. That's the deduplication capability. That's absolutely incredible. We replaced a lot of tape with just a small amount of data. This is a backup plan. I will hit pause here as well. A backup plan in Arcserve UDP is essentially a series of steps. Step 1 being perform a backup usually. And here we've got replicate, which is obviously replicating from the, if you refer to the diagram, the Telstra CSX RPS server to the SoftLayer RPS server, and then performing a couple of things inside of SoftLayer and performing a virtual standby to VMware. So I'm updating my standby virtual machine, and I'm performing an assured recovery test at the same time. So we actually spin up a virtual machine from the backup to test it. And obviously you wouldn't normally do that after every backup, but maybe once a week you might want to do that. That can be scheduled to occur. And the last task in this particular plan is to replicate to Amazon. So I'll just let it play through. So you can see this is the Arcserve UDP console. I'm just going to force an incremental backup of the 2 servers for that particular backup plan. And I have obviously sped up parts of this recording in order to squeeze in as much as possible into the webinar. There's the section of the image that I was referring to. The 2 servers are being backed up to the RPS server. You can see the backup is very, very small because they're infinite incrementals. The second step in the plan is to replicate the data, and we're going between the two RPS servers, one in Telstra CSX and one in SoftLayer. The next step of the plan, there was the virtual standby to the hypervisor, which is a VMware hypervisor, and the assured recovery test happening simultaneously. But really, the one we're interested in is this last step, which is the replication from the RPS server, the second RPS server, to the third RPS server in Amazon. This is now taking a look at the RPS server inside of Amazon. It's receiving the data, and then it's preparing the virtual standby server. And this is actually the slowest step of the process. We need to leverage the Amazon S3 snapshots, and so it can take a little while to update those standby virtual machines. The virtual machines are now available, the standby virtual machines, and I can now choose to power on one of my replica VMs and choose one of the point-in times to actually power up. This is my Amazon console. If I hit, what am I doing? Oh yeah, hit refresh. You should see the virtual machine there. UDP underscore UDP POC1 is initializing, and I can display the screenshot just to see that it is actually booting up. Sometime later, I can obviously refresh that screenshot, and you can see I've got what you'd normally expect to see when there you go, a Windows console. And of course, I can open up security groups and RDP to that server and expect to find all of the data that you would normally expect to see there. So that's virtual standby for Windows servers in EC2. Recovery time actually from when you initiate the power it on is very, very short. It's less than 5 minutes. Obviously, the virtual standby process takes a bit of time to prepare in advance. The second demo is instant VM recovery of a Linux VM in Amazon EC2. So a different process, but same result. Now, here again is my backup plan. This is the simplest setup. It's just a backup plan where I'm backing up a server and I'm just going to recover the server. So I just literally need to select the server from the menu and use the actions menu and say create an instant VM. I then choose the recovery point I want to recover. So the latest one is obviously displayed there, and I can look at previous ones on the same day or go back in time and choose any other point in time. I'm going to choose the latest recovery point, type in my password for the recovery, because obviously there's a session password on that particular backup job. Specify my Amazon account. So I've obviously got an Amazon account already populated, or I could choose to add an account if need be. I'm just going to use obviously the account I've already prepared. I then get to choose my Linux backup server. So I mentioned we do need that Linux VM running in order to do these recoveries, but obviously it doesn't need to be running all the time. It can just be powered on prior to doing a recovery. I can give my VM name, I can choose my instance type, my region, my storage type, my network, my subnet, and choose my security group. And the last checkbox there is to recover the data automatically after the VM started. That's going to start it's going to obviously going to boot the VM, with a subset of its operating system, and it's going to continue, and it's going to be operational. Applications and things will run. But it's been reading data from the data store. But in the background mode, it's going to restore all the data from the backup onto its local EBS volumes. You can see there the VM has been created and it's initializing. If I view the screenshot, I'll see this is the UDP live CD environment that it's actually using to facilitate the recovery. I refresh again, you can see it's rebooted and it's starting to boot up. Refresh again, I'm at the logon screen, and yes, I did speed that up. Okay, it's a bit slower than that. Back in the Arcserve console, I can actually watch the progress of the restore. So I mentioned the server's available and it's ready to use. You can see there by looking at the job phase, but in background mode, it's recovering all of the data from the backup, and it will continue to do that until it's completed. So that is instant VM for Linux. That really brings us on to high availability and Arcserve replication and high availability to EC2. This is obviously something that we've been talking about for several years now, and we've got many large and successful deployments leveraging Amazon as a DR environment. We've also completed dozens of, hundreds even of server migrations with our partners to Amazon. It is the best tool to get your servers to Amazon. So we got this real-time replication of your full system to offline EC2 instances without requiring conversion from an S3 image. So it gives us an RPO that's really, bandwidth allowing should be less than a second. It gives us an RTO that's measured in minutes, and typically in AWS it's less than 15 minutes. We've got the real-time protection of applications such as SQL, Oracle Exchange, and file servers, which can be used for those specific applications. We've got automated assured recovery testing, and this is a killer feature whether you're doing DR or whether you're doing migrations, because we've got this capability to be able to spin up the VM at any point in time on an isolated VCP or an isolated subnet. It doesn't matter. Even if you go into a completely separate VCP of where you want the server to replicate to, we can bring it up there within 15 minutes. We have a data rewind capability, so to any point in time, if that's turned on, and typically that wouldn't be turned on forever, it's something like a 2-hour window maybe, or a 24-hour window where you could capture every byte level change of the server and recover the data from that particular point in time. Cascaded protection. This is a feature that I was asked to deploy recently, where we are protecting a live production server to more than one EC2 region. So we're going from the primary availability zone in the Sydney region to the secondary availability zone and to an availability zone in Singapore with the real-time replication. We've got, obviously, once you've replicated the data, you've got the ability to back up that data. So you've got the data out of the building, and you can use the Arcserve backup capability to back up that to S3 or to the virtual tape library. This is an image that really shows the overview of how this solution is deployed. We have our on-premise physical or virtual servers, some kind of network connection. Obviously, we can go use a direct connect, we can use a VPN, or we can go directly over the internet to an elastic IP address if that's all we've got. We would deploy at least one Arcserve server that's going to have the Arcserve engine on, and it may also have the controller software on, or we may have a dedicated controller and multiple engine servers. And that is basically, it's shown here in the public subnet, but it basically needs access to these servers. It needs to be able to connect in some way. We then have maybe a private subnet, which is where we want our replica machines to appear once we fail over or migrate. And we also have an isolated assured recovery subnet, which we can perform our daily assured recovery testing, or we can perform a pre-migration test. The way this actually works is when we start a scenario, Arcserve will instruct Amazon or EC2 to create replica EBS volumes, and they will be mounted to our target server, our engine server. We'll then sync the data directly into those disks. When we perform a test failover, or a short recovery test, our Arcserve will instruct EC2 to create a new replica VM. It will detach these volumes, EBS volumes, and attach them to that new VM and boot from those disks. When we do a live failover, similarly, we'll create replica VMs in the private subnet, attach those EBS volumes, and then boot them up from that image. Very, very clever. Very, very simple. This is a screenshot from a deployment we assisted with recently. You can see there's actually about 50 servers. You can't see it there, so I'll just zoom in. Here, what we've got there, you can see the RPO and the RTO of those servers, and they're all being replicated in real time from on-premise or an on-premise data center to Amazon EC2. I mentioned multi-zone, multi-region. There's various solutions. I just got a few little diagrams that I put, just kind of might explain it. We can do our on-premise protection or real-time replication to availability zone A in Sydney, for example. Then we can obviously cascade that to availability zone B in Sydney. We can with optional versioning, so we can have different levels of recoverability for the data. And again, like I mentioned on that previous deployment, we can then add Singapore into the mix and replicate there. And it's a cascaded, so the data is arriving on the first replica first, then on the second, then on the third, and then possibly a third. We can insert a delay even if we want to postpone the data arriving on, say, Singapore by a number of hours. We can do that. Alternatively, we can replicate multiple times at the same time. So we're not doing a cascading. We're replicating to two availability zones at the same time. So we've got two versions of the live data, and we can choose if we don't. In this case, do we want to recover into Sydney or do we want to recover into Singapore? So I've got one more short demo. This is the very short one, showing you the replication high availability engine in action, first of all, and then just showing you a quick recovery task. So first of all, before I begin, I'll just explain here. I'm protecting a server called C1-AWS SQL 1 and I'm going to AWS, obviously. This is my C drive, a folder called data on that particular server, and this is the C drive, the replica C drive. I mentioned the EBS volume. It's mounted to the engine server. This is that replica volume. It's the mappings of it. So I'll just press play. So the first thing I'm just going to do is create a file. I'm just going to create a bitmap image, and you'll see that it appears on the remote side immediately. That's just showing you the real-time replication engine in action. Very briefly, this is my protected server. I'm just going to perform a switch over. So I'm actually going to, this is the process you do to fail over in the event of a DR or to complete a migration. So I just initiate the switch over from the UDP console, from the high availability portion of the UDP console, and then that will begin the process. You can see there we've created the switchover VM. And if you look at the Amazon console, you'll see there's a new VM being created and it's initializing, and just have to wait a little bit longer. So the process it goes through to actually create the VM and get it to boot from the replica disk is very clever. You can see here, switchover is completed, short time later. And it gives us instructions on how to recover that if we want to. We can see now the C1 AWS SQL 1 underscore replica server, and if I just take the instant screenshot, I can see I'm booted up into Windows exactly as you'd expect to see on the server. That's just a really short demo, because I do have several video demos of that process. I thought I'd do one a little bit different today to keep it short. That's really the overview of the completion of the webinar, of the content that I wanted to show you. I will just ask another quick poll if anyone is interested in attending a more detailed training session in any of these locations. Sorry about if there's any locations being missed there, but the console only allowed me to specify 5 places. So if you can have a look at that. Of course, if you're no interest in training, then just leave it blank. That's fine as well. Let's give that another 10 or 20 seconds. Okay, we're nearly there. Maybe just another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'll close that poll. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, if there are any questions, we've got plenty of time for questions. I did fly through the webinar because I know everybody's busy, and I'm not the only one I know. So if you've got any questions now, we can take those. Okay, got a question here. This is a good point. Someone saying they'd like to attend training in Fiji, but they don't live in Fiji, so but I get that one. Yeah, so question here about real-time replication. Does it go to EBS or to S3? Yeah, when we're using the real-time replication engine, we're going to replicate directly to EBS volumes. So if you've got an understanding of the different disk types or storage types in Amazon, S3 is basically a very low cost blob-based storage that cannot be used for servers for booting disks, etc. It can only be used for essentially file repository. EBS is the equivalent of your physical disk in your server, or in your laptop, or your virtual machine VMDK file or VHD file. That's the equivalent. So we replicate to the EBS volumes. That way they are available for immediate use. Now, there are some other products out on the market that have a supposed solution for DR, high availability, etc., but they leverage S3, and obviously they say that that's a lower cost solution in terms of storage, which may or may not be true, but they have to go through a lengthy conversion process to create the EBS volume before they can boot up the server. Now we're replicating directly to an EBS volume that is immediately available for use. So that's I think answers that question. Is the database always consistent? Essentially, yes. It's a bit of a open question. When we're performing real-time replication engine, we're using a filter driver that is essentially replicating all of the data that is written to the disk as it is being written. So I guess once the data has been synced up and you're busy making changes to your database and we're replicating it, if there is a power outage of your production server and we have to fail over to whatever we've got managed to replicate, it's going to boot up the server in a crash consistent state, exactly the same as if you'd powered off the server and then powered it on again, and your SQL Server database would recover itself, in a short period of time. Quickly move on to licensing models. The licenses required for AWS. Really good question. Really good question. There's no specific license model for AWS, and I really wish Arcserve were on the call so they could hear my complaints. Essentially, for the RPS server, we talk about UDP, you can deploy an RPS server in AWS and you can recover those VMs in AWS, and there's no additional cost. The only thing you license is the source servers that you're backing up. So you back up the If you're backing up VMware environment, you might use a socket-based license, or if you're backing up physical servers, you might use a server-based license, or you may use a capacity-based license. Inside of VMware, if you want to protect your inside of Amazon, sorry, if you want to protect the virtual machines you're running in Amazon, you have to use either a per server license or a capacity-based license, because we can't count the CPUs inside of Amazon, obviously. Okay, just links to another question about the licensing for Arcserve at AWS. Like I say, there's no specific license for Arcserve in AWS. You just have to use one of the existing license models, but you're only licensing the servers you're backing up. I'll mention Cloud Data Safe. Yes, Cloud Data Safe is one of the products that we provide. Essentially, Cloud Data Safe is exactly what we've just presented. It's the whole Arcserve UDP solution packaged as just as that, as a solution, as a managed service offering that is available through resellers who don't wish to be a managed service provider themselves. That's basically what that is. Is there any more questions? Just going back. No, if there's no more, oh, sorry, there's another question. Yeah, so just about real-time replication. I think really Arcserve RHA is a massive differentiator between Arcserve and other backup vendors. It is really quite unique. I mean, obviously there are other real-time replication products, but they are standalone products. Arcserve RHA is included inside of your backup solution. So you've got your backup, your typical backup. Every server in your environment needs a backup solution. So UDP ticks that box. RHA is an extra capability for the tier one servers, the more critical servers that usually you would have to go and purchase another solution for, but it's included inside of Arcserve UDP. I hope that answers that particular question. Well, if there's no further questions, I will close it there. Nice and short. I hope everyone enjoyed it. If there's any questions or anyone wants to see more detailed demos, you can email me or at nick@cloudreadysolutions.com.au, or get in touch with Arcserve directly, or email Kelly at cloudreadysolutions.com.au, and we'll make ourselves available. I hope you all enjoyed the webinar. Thank you.